The broadcast began with laughter. 12 admirals stood within the command spire of the Imperial flagship Vorinth, surrounded by hollow screens depicting a single drifting vessel. Black hull. No transponder. No movement for 71 minutes. The tag beside it read, Terran Relic, Pre-Empire Origin, Class Unknown. Admiral Sarek folded 4 of his arms behind his back. A relic indeed, he said, voice filtered through the chamber's translation field. Send the live feed to the public channel. Let the world see the final ruin of Earth's ghosts. Hollow light bathed his angular face. Across the sector, billions tuned in. The feed carried the image of the silent ship, an obsidian dagger against the pale rim of stars. They built it from metal, one of the younger officers said. No field lattice. No reactive plating, Sarek smiled thinly. Primitive courage disguised as engineering. The fleet repositioned, 42 heavy cruisers forming a sphere around the Terran vessel. Drones transmitted every angle, magnifying hull scars and dormant gun ports for the broadcast. Commentators on civilian channels mocked the crude weld lines and faded Terran insignia. It's older than the Empire itself, one analyst laughed. A museum piece lost in the void. View counts climbed past 9 billion. The words relic caught trended across 10 systems. At 0400 cycle mark, Sarek authorized the boarding order. 3 shuttles detached, gleaming like mercury crossing the 5-kilometer gulf. Their grav lights flickered across the Terran hull, illuminating engravings barely visible through frost. The inscription read, TSV Vengeance, Terran Strategic Vessel. Dramatic, Sarek murmured. Their species loved such names, a sensor officer frowned. Admiral, the hull temperature is rising. No power signature detected, but internal heat increasing 0.1 Kelvin per second. Residual reactor bleed, Sarek dismissed. Continue approach. The first punchline dropped with perfect timing on screen. Relics can't fight. The phrase echoed through 1,000 watchrooms. Inside the command spire, another officer chuckled. Do you imagine it still has a crew? No, Sarek said. Just ghosts and rust. But ghosts make fine propaganda. The boarding shuttles reached contact range. Magnetic locks engaged with a dull thud. Cameras streamed the moment live, the triumphant flag of the Empire projected on the Terran hull. The feed split into 12 views, each showing soldiers in silver suits preparing to breach. Then, silence. A low vibration rolled through the Vorinth's hull. Instruments glitched, resetting twice in rapid succession. Report, Sarek barked. Unclear, Admiral. Background radiation spike. 6 times baseline. The Terran ship's running lights came alive one by one, cold white along the spine, then a steady pulse of crimson from the engines. The shuttles detached automatically, thrown back by a surge of magnetic flux. Sarek stared. Was that deliberate activation? Unknown. Power levels rising exponentially. On the public feed, laughter turned to static. Commentators hesitated, waiting for the script. No one had written one for this. The Terran vessel rotated slowly, aligning broadside toward the Imperial formation. Its hull shimmered as if awakening from sleep. Another officer whispered, Admiral, are you seeing this? Maintain stream, Sarek ordered, voice lower now. History must record the extinction of myth. The relic's central array unfolded, a structure of black armor plates revealing a singular aperture. Sensors tagged it as a weapon port. Heat readings spiked again, 20 degrees in 6 seconds. Still no energy source, the tech stammered. But the thermal curve matches a reactor of Class Omega output. That was impossible. Cut transmission to civilians, Sarek said quietly. Now, the communications officer froze. Sir, the system— Do it! No response. The Terran ship, it's transmitting through us. The public broadcast flickered. Across the Empire, every viewer saw the same image. The Terran vessel, eyes of light burning through void. A single line of Terran standard appeared beneath it. Auto-translated by every receiver. Observation accepted. For one long second, the admirals watched their own reflection in the enemy's hull. Thousands of Imperial warships mirrored like ants around a blade. Sarek's voice broke the silence. Deactivate cameras. End feed. No one moved. Outside, the relic's engines ignited, painting the void in blue fire. The temperature spike tripled. The boarding shuttles disintegrated, atomized in 0.7 seconds. Within the spire, Sarek felt his throat tighten. "How old did you say that vessel was?" "Records indicate 21 millennia, Admiral." "Then someone," Sarek whispered, "forgot to bury it properly." The Terran ship began to advance, slow, deliberate, like a predator testing the water. "Sensors logged movement at 0.04 C. Sound general alert," Sarek said. He watched the relic turn its weapons toward the nearest cruiser. In the reflection of the viewport, he saw himself framed by blue light. The feed ended there. Word spread faster than any fleet could travel. Billions who had mocked the relic now whispered one phrase across the Empire's networks. They woke it. No response came from the relic. For 9 hours, the Imperial Armada held position around it, 12,000 ships encircling a single motionless vessel of obsidian alloy. The public broadcast had been cut, but the silence afterward traveled faster than light. Every fleet in the Empire wanted to know how an ancient Terran artifact had survived direct exposure to high-yield scans, magnetic lockdowns, and 3 failed boarding attempts. Admiral Sarek hadn't slept. He stood at the viewport again, lit by the ghostly glare of the human ship. Its hull still pulsed once every 60 seconds, like a heartbeat under armor. "Send another hail," he ordered. "Already transmitted, Admiral." "No return signal on any frequency modulation or format. Even their beacon codes are dead," Sarek exhaled slowly. "Then we will speak in numbers." "Begin spectral analysis." The Vorinth's central core hummed. Beams of focused neutrino light swept across the Terran hull, measuring reflection and absorption patterns. The data came in seconds later. Nonsensical, contradictory. "Density readings are beyond tolerance," the science officer whispered. "Internal reactor mass equivalent to 2 neutron cores. Compact, stable, but impossible." "That ship's total mass is only 4 megatons. It shouldn't hold half that." "Check again." I did. "Power flux at 40 exawatts. Minimal radiation loss. Containment is—" The officer stopped, voice cracking. "Absolute." A new line appeared on the sensor display. "Source integrity at 99.9997%. Impossible," Sarek muttered. "No civilization sustains that containment ratio. Not even ours." The relic didn't move. No heat vents, no magnetic distortion, no life signatures. Only that rhythmic pulse, precise, unchanging. He remembered the words it had broadcast before the silence. Observation accepted. A punchline came to him unbidden. "Maybe it observes us still." The crew pretended not to hear. Down in engineering, technicians tried to trace the residual energy. Every reading collapsed into static the moment they plotted it. The reactor seemed to exist in fractional phases, oscillating between measurable states. The numbers implied a theoretical power density 20 times the Empire's largest Dreadnought cores. Could it be a decoy? Someone asked. Sarek watched the relic drift against the starfield. If it is, it's the most expensive lie ever built. They attempted active ping, 12 bursts across gravitational bands. The signals struck the hull and vanished, as if swallowed by a singularity. The comms officer turned pale. "Admiral, the pings aren't reflecting. They're being delayed." Returned from inside the ship. A murmur spread through the deck. "Inside?" "Yes, sir. Time-coded echoes from within, delayed exactly 37 seconds. Meaning, they're listening, then deciding when to answer." Sarek stared at the black shape. No movement, no reply. Just that heartbeat of white light. At the 10th hour, sensors detected microfluctuations in the void around the relic. The field distortion measured 0.002 C, barely perceptible. Gravitic bleed? No, Admiral, more like breathing. He closed his eyes for a moment. Maintain formation. Prepare for intercept at 1,000 clicks if it moves. Yes, sir. Far across the network, Empire analysts demanded data packets. Scientists argued over theories. Ancient AI, temporal shielding, quantum cocooning. None could explain why a 21,000-year-old Terran ship radiated infinite containment, but leaked no heat. At hour 11, Sarek ordered one last hail. "This is Admiral Sarek of the Imperial Command. Identify yourself." The speakers carried only static. Then, faintly, an echo. His own words, replayed back in Terran Standard, perfectly mirrored. "This is Admiral Sarek of the Imperial Command. Identify yourself, his jaw tightened. Mockery, then. Or comprehension, said the science officer quietly. The relic shifted, just a fraction, less than a degree. But every ship's targeting sensors registered it simultaneously. Hull temperature rose by 2 Kelvin. Engines are live, someone whispered. Sarek raised his hand. Hold position. We do not provoke ghosts. A ripple of tension froze the command deck. Even the machinery seemed to stop breathing. The relic's light pulse paused for the first time. One long silence, then a single flash brighter than before. Record that pattern, Sarek said. Binary? Negative, it's a countdown. Every console displayed the same message. Transmission cycle initializing. 005. The countdown reached 1. The relic's systems went dark again. Nothing followed. Admiral, the comms officer said softly. What was that? Sarek stared into the void, voice barely audible. A warning or an invitation? Either way, it heard us. The order came at 12-hour fleet standard. Fire. 12,000 ships lit the void in synchronized fury. Fusion lances, particle shears, coherent plasma threads. Every weapon in the Imperial arsenal converged on a single point. The Terran relic vanished behind a wall of light. For 12 seconds, nothing existed but brilliance. Sensors registered temperatures exceeding 40 million Kelvin, equivalent to stellar corona. Admiral Sarek watched from the Vorinth's bridge, eyes narrowed against the glare. Maintain output. Burn it clean. When the final beam cut off, the void returned. The relic was still there. Its hull glowed dull red for a heartbeat. Then cooled, surface temperature stabilizing at 300 K, perfect equilibrium. No vapor, no debris. Sarek blinked once. Confirmed damage. None, the weapons officer whispered. Surface absorbed 98% of total energy. Remaining 2%, redirected. Redirected where? Stand by! The officer's console flickered, alarm tones cascading. Admiral, we're detecting anomalous radiation surge from Vector 41 by 12. It's our own formation. Through the viewport, 12 bright flares ignited in rapid sequence. Energy spikes arced like inverted lightning, tracing back toward the firing ships. The redirected fraction struck their reactors directly. Containment fields shattered. In the space of 3 seconds, 57 cruisers melted from within, hulls turning liquid silver. Sarek gripped the rail. Cease fire! Cease! Too late! The feedback wave rippled outward, chaining across link relays. Auxiliary vessels caught in the reflection convulsed, their cores blooming into brief suns. Then silence again. Perfect, sterile silence. A punchline etched itself into every terrified mind. 98% absorbed. 2% returned. The phrase would haunt the Empire's archives for centuries. The relic had not moved. Reactor displacement. Inverted, said the chief engineer in disbelief. It turned our output against us. Physics doesn't. It does now, Sarek interrupted. Track that residual vector. How fast did it route the return? 0 delay? Instant across 7 light seconds. Admiral, the math suggests quantum reflection. It learned our frequency mid-strike. Sarek's throat felt dry. Meaning it anticipated the beam? No, sir. It read it, then decided what to keep. The crew stood frozen. Every console displayed stable readings from the Terran ship. Energy equilibrium maintained within microvariants. Hull stress minimal. What kind of armor does that? No known lattice, Admiral. Internal compositions changing per scan. It's rewriting itself. Sarek stared at the shadow in the center of the formation, haloed by vapor from ruined cruisers. That ship's not defending. It's studying us. Should we fall back? Not yet. His voice steadied, steel under control. We triggered it. We finish observing. On the outer rim of the formation, surviving vessels drifted among molten wrecks. Emergency beacons blinked against the dark, thousands of escape pods ejecting in synchronized arcs. In the silence, the relic pulsed once, blue light spreading across its hull like breath. The pattern repeated, deliberate. The frequency matched Imperial distress code intervals. Mockery again, muttered a comms tech. Sarek shook his head. No, response. He leaned closer to the viewport. The relic turned, aligning broadside toward the Vorinth. Its hull began to resonate, thin filaments of plasma tracing patterns along the armor seams. Power output. Rising, said the technician. 40 exawatts, 60. Climbing past recorded limits. But it's not directing toward us. Where then? Back into the debris field. Sarek watched, wordless, as the relic projected faint arcs of light over the melted Imperial ships. The slag cooled instantly, forming solid crystal shapes, frozen reminders of what had just happened. The relic wasn't attacking. It was marking. "Admiral," whispered the science officer. "It's writing something into the Rex." Enhance feed. The patterns formed words in Terran standard, visible even through the glare of plasma. Test complete. Shock settled into the command deck. No one spoke. Sarek finally broke the silence. Record every byte of that transmission. And tell Fleet Command, the relic is not a relic. Outside, the Terran ship rotated once more, engines flaring just enough to scatter debris. The faint light bled across Sarek's face, cold and precise. He whispered to himself, "If 98% is defense, what does 100 look like?" No one answered. The relic moved. No thruster ignition. No warp bloom. Just motion, sudden, precise, and silent. Senses screamed as reality recalibrated around it. "Velocity spike. Mach 24 equivalent." The nav officer shouted. "Correction. No exhaust signature. It's bending inertia itself." Admiral Sarek gripped the rail, watching the black shape carve across his formation like a blade through mist. The Terran vessel didn't accelerate. It repositioned, each shift measured in micrometers and kilometers at once. In 22 seconds, it crossed 18,000 kilometers of open void. 12 destroyers caught in its wake tore apart, sheared by turbulence in spacetime, hulls folded like foil, distance closing. "We can't track vectors. It's not obeying Newtonian mapping." Sarek forced his tone calm. "Project trajectory using frame differential." "Don't predict, observe." The relic vanished again. Reappeared 600 kilometers off the flagship's bow, nose tilted slightly down. Sensors tagged residual velocity fields equal to 0.07 C. "Admiral," whispered the science officer, "that's relativistic movement without temporal distortion." "Meaning?" "Meaning it's rewriting the laws we fight under." He didn't answer. He only watched the ship hover, utterly still again, like nothing had happened. Across the fleet, captains shouted into overlapping channels. Formations collapsed as ships tried to maintain spacing, overcorrecting, clipping each other's shields. One cruiser rammed another at 2 kilometers per second. Both disintegrated into vapor. The relic pulsed once, a calm white flicker. Not an attack, just acknowledgement. Mach 24. No engines. The punchline traveled across every tactical feed, word for word, as officers annotated logs in disbelief. Sarek exhaled. "Stabilize formations. All ships hold fire." "They already did, sir," said the comms chief. "The fleet can't aim. Tracking systems reset every time it jumps. The Vorinth's own targeting grid recalculated 9 times per second, always wrong." The relic defied every model. The science officer spoke again. "Mass displacement unchanged. It's still 4 megatons. So how does 4 megatons move like light? By making inertia optional." On the auxiliary screens, the Terran vessel adjusted orientation. Tiny movements, like breathing. The bow aligned toward the largest Imperial battleship in the formation, the Seraphine. "They think it's targeting them," the comms chief said. "Let them think," Sarek replied. "Maybe fear will keep them still." The relic advanced. Not fast this time, deliberate, almost graceful. Range, 10,000 meters, 5,000, 1,000. The Seraphine's shields flared blue, collapsing under the ship's presence alone. No collision. The Terran hull passed through the shield like mist. Magnetic fields in both vessels distorted. The Seraphine's reactor shorted instantly. Explosion. White sphere. 30,000 crew, gone before alarms reached their ears. Mach 24. "And it's choosing where to apply it," whispered the navigator. The command deck fell silent again. Sarek felt the weight of every surviving gaze. They wanted a spectacle. Now they have one. For 30 seconds, the relic hovered where the Seraphine had been, fragments orbiting it like frozen ash. Then, just as suddenly, it repositioned 40,000 kilometers away, beyond the fleet's right flank. "New velocity, Mach 24.3, the sensor officer murmured. "Trajectory intersects debris fields, but—" "Admiral, it's avoiding escape pods." Sarek turned sharply. "Repeat that," confirmed. "It's weaving through lifeboats. No impacts, he studied the displays. The relic's path curved through drifting pods, each arc measured to the meter. Speed unimaginable. Precision absolute, mercy in motion. He spoke softly. It kills only when necessary. Across the decks, the crew exchanged glances. The ship's movement wasn't random. It was discipline, calculation, a demonstration. Sarek looked back at the void where thousands of tons of Imperial metal now floated in molten fragments. "Transmit to the fleet," he said. "Cease pursuit. Observe only. Every move it makes teaches us what we're not." A final pulse rippled from the relic's hull, 3 flashes evenly spaced. Telemetry recorded gravitational shockwaves radiating outward at light speed, strong enough to disrupt local magnetic fields across 2 systems. "Signal content?" Sarek asked. The comms officer hesitated. "Translation incomplete. Partial decode reads, 'Acceleration doctrine confirmed.'" The relic slowed to a perfect halt, a lined bow toward the Vorinth. Its hull cooled, lights fading to neutral white. No threat posture. No demand, just presence. Sarek exhaled through his teeth. "Doctrine," he muttered. "They built rules for war, even their ghosts obey." Outside, the fragments of the Seraphine drifted apart like embers in darkness. The relic didn't follow. It waited. The relic spoke first this time. No words, just a pulse. A low subsonic vibration that rolled through every hull in the formation. The Vorinth's instruments fluttered, recalibrated, then flatlined. Data feeds vanished. "Gravity sensors went blind. Admiral, telemetry is gone," said the chief analyst. "All readings zeroed. Even inertial anchors." "I can see that," Sarek replied. His voice stayed level, but the deck crew caught the edge in it. The Terran ship hung before them, unmoving, black against a pale starfield. Yet the void felt heavier now, like tension itself had weight. The relic's ventral array opened, 12 panels shifting apart with surgical precision. Inside, something gleamed. A rod, silver-gray, smooth, only 5 meters long. The bridge fell silent. "That's solid metal," whispered the engineer. "No warhead." "No guidance," Sarek frowned. "Composition?" "Spectral analysis, tungsten, pure." He almost laughed. "A slug? At this range?" "Admiral," said the weapons officer softly. "It's moving." The rod detached, accelerating without flare or exhaust. 0.2C within 2 seconds. Sensors could barely track it. Half the computers refused to accept the numbers. Vector, directly through Sector Theta formation. "That's 400 ships. Impact." The fleet's tactical map convulsed. In less than a heartbeat, 412 ships winked out, erased, not destroyed. Every hull along the rod's path became plasma, expanding into a perfect corridor of annihilation 30 kilometers wide. Time fractured. Alarms howled. The bridge lighting dimmed from the overload. "Confirm hit count," Sarek said. 412 confirmed, sir. "Duration, 37 seconds from launch to silence." "Casualties?" The officer stared at his console. "All hands. 1.6 million souls." A stinger line burned across the logs. "1 rod." 37 seconds. The relic did not fire again. Thermal output. Sarek asked, "Minimal." "Hull temp unchanged." "Kinetic only." The Admiral turned away from the viewport. "Then it used gravity, not chemistry." The science officer found his voice. "The impact trail." "Admiral, it didn't decelerate. The rod's still moving. No debris pattern. It's gone. Gone where?" "Straight through." "It never stopped." He tapped the console, projecting trajectory lines through the main display. The vector continued out of the system, across 2 orbital paths, through a gas giant's ring, and onward toward deep interstellar space. The math was obscene. At that speed, the rod would reach the next star in 43 hours. No signal. No retrieval. Just motion until infinity. It wasn't a weapon, Sarek said. It was a demonstration. He stared at the tactical map's hollow corridor, 400 ships erased as if erased from history. Around it, the remaining fleet drifted in confusion, engines cold, communications silent. One captain broke the quiet channel first. "Admiral, orders?" "None," Sarek said. "Hold position," another voice. "Sir, they're targeting array. Offline." "They won't need it again." The relic moved slightly, rotating on its axis. Along its hull, faint lines glowed. Coordinates, data bursts, unknown scripts. Each pulse mirrored the precise location of the destroyed ships. Then the lights faded, leaving the void unchanged. "Is it cataloging the dead?" someone asked. Sarek didn't answer. His mind counted seconds, imagining 37 of them stretched into eternity. Each tick a statement. He watched the relic drift back to its prior position, calm as before. It wasn't triumph, it was procedure. "Admiral," said the commem's chief, "incoming signal burst." Binary sequence. Translating. It reads, "Efficiency test concluded." A pause. Then a second line appeared beneath it. "Doctrine maintained, minimum force achieved." Every eye turned to Sarek. "Minimum force," he repeated. That was minimum. He looked again at the empty wedge where 412 ships had been, an open wound carved clean through starlight. "Note the time," he ordered. 37 seconds. Write it down. History needs the number. He turned toward the viewport. The relic hovered in perfect stillness, its reflection burning faintly against the glass. "Let it go quiet," he said finally. "It's shown us enough." The comms officer nodded, lowering her hands from the console. Outside, the Terran ship's hull dimmed to darkness once more, the last shimmer fading like breath on glass. No one spoke, only the counter ticked once. More, marking the end of 37 perfect seconds. Static filled the void where fleets once roared. The wreckage of 412 ships drifted in geometric silence, glowing faintly against the blue-white curve of the local star. Every surviving Imperial vessel held position, engines idle, as if movement itself might draw attention. The Terran relic hovered at the center, black, still, immaculate. No radiation leaks, no visible damage, only that pulse again, faint and patient, once every 60 seconds. Admiral Sarek stood before the viewport, uniform creased but unmoving. His crew waited for orders. "None came. Status of the relic?" he asked quietly. "Stable," replied the sensor chief. "Energy consistent. Zero aggression since the strike. Communications?" "Nothing inbound." Spectrum silent. Sarek exhaled once, slow. "Then we'll try again." He tapped the console. Fleet-wide open broadcast. Every surviving ship listened as his voice carried across the network. "Terran vessel. This is Admiral Sarek of the Imperial Command. Identify your purpose." Nothing. The relic floated among the ruins of its own lesson. "Repeat it," Sarek said. The comms officer hesitated. "Admiral, the previous attempts..." "Again," she obeyed. Signal fired. The silence returned, deep enough to feel physical. Then came a sound. Not speech, not code, just modulation, low and surgical. "Transmission incoming," the officer said. "Source, Terran vessel." The voice that followed was human. Calm, centered, without tone or malice. It spoke in standards so perfect it felt engineered. "Surrender your weapons. Evacuate your civilians. You will not be harmed." The bridge froze. The words repeated once, identical cadence, then stopped. Sarek said nothing. The comms officer turned to him. "Admiral, that can't be an AI. It feels deliberate." He stepped closer to the viewport. "Signal composition? Single-band gravitic carrier. Power negligible. We almost missed it." So it spoke with whisper power. The officer nodded. "Equivalent to a handheld radio at this range." Then it wanted to be heard, not feared. On screen, data scrolled across subspace feeds. Surrender or evacuate. 6 words looping, measured, absolute. Any translation variants? "None. The syntax is precise. Legal language almost." Sarek read it again, lips moving silently. "You will not be harmed." He looked at his officers. "Count our civilians. 11 freighters, 21 evacuation barges. 20 million total souls. Get them moving, sir." "Do it," the command echoed through the fleet. Civilian engines lit one by one, arcs of orange flame pushing broken convoys toward the outer lanes. The relic didn't react. One junior captain's voice cracked over comms. "Admiral, if we comply, what then?" Sarek answered without turning. "Then we survive to ask better questions." The science officer spoke softly. "Admiral, that tone, it isn't a threat." "No," Sarek said. "It's policy." A punchline whispered across the room like a prayer. "Mercy is measured." The Terran vessel emitted another pulse. "Shorter this time. Directed. Translation incoming," said the comms chief. "It reads observation terminated." Return to command. What does that mean? Unknown. Possibly end of engagement. Sarek stared at the shifting hull reflections. Then we are no longer worth its attention. He straightened his uniform. Transmit our compliance. No pursuit, no provocation. Record the order officially. Yes, Admiral. Outside, the convoy streams lengthened into thin lines of light. Every civilian ship that cleared the debris zone left a trail of gratitude and confusion behind. None were attacked. The relic remained motionless, a guardian statue amid the ashes of arrogance. Admiral, whispered the science officer, if that's restraint, how far does their power go? Sarek didn't answer. He only watched as the relic turned, slow, deliberate, aligning itself toward the Empire's heartward coordinates. Plot its trajectory, he said finally. It's not aimed at us, the officer murmured. It's facing home, Sarek nodded once. Even ghosts report in. On the screens, the last line of the Terran message flashed once more. Faint against the noise. Surrender or evacuate your civilians. You will not be harmed. Then silence returned. Clean, surgical and final. The data arrived in fragments. At first, the Imperial analysts believed it corruption, aftershocks from the relic's kinetic strike. But as the seconds passed, the patterns grew clear. Dozens of clean telemetry traces buried beneath noise aligned into formation geometry. Admiral, said the sensor chief, voice tight, we've uncovered residual gravitic echoes. Not from us and not from the relic, Sarek turned. Source? Multiple points, 39 distinct vectors. Range between 0.3 and 0.9 AU. They were there the entire time. The room went silent. He stepped to the console. The data unfolded across the display. Ghost signatures, each small, each stable, forming precise concentric rings around the main battle. A lattice of intent. Play back the logs from the first beam, Sarek ordered. Footage reassembled. The relic at the center. Energy lances converging. Fleet destroyed. But now, overlaid in false color, faint ripples shimmered beyond sensor range, moving in synchrony with the Terran ship's pulse. Those are warships, whispered the science officer. Minimal emissions, null drives at standby. Perfect stealth, Sarek frowned. Estimate count. 67 confirmed, potentially more beyond detection limits. They've been observing us since first contact. A punchline hit the deck like a whisper of thunder. One relic was never alone. Across the fleet, comm channels erupted. Captains demanded clarification. Analysts argued signal drift. Command relays flooded with noise. Silence them, Sarek said evenly. They're listening. The officer froze. Sir, who? He gestured to the screen. Who do you think? The relic's latest pulse synchronized with the ghost signatures again. Each flicker mirrored one-to-one. 67 identical responses, timed to microseconds. The science officer swallowed hard. Coordinated acknowledgement. They're linked. Sarek studied the geometry. Pattern? Triangular grids nested around civilian evacuation lanes. They're protecting the convoys, 20 million lives, escaping through debris and fear, and 67 hidden Terran ships watching from the dark. The realization settled cold across the bridge. This hadn't been a solitary monument of vengeance. It was a controlled engagement. Transmission match? Sarek asked. Every pulse uses the same root code as the relic. Shared encryption lattice. Same doctrine. The Admiral's voice softened, almost reverent. So that message wasn't one ship speaking? No, sir. It was a fleet. Outside the viewport, the relic remained perfectly still. But now, knowing eyes saw the shimmer, the faint bends in starlight where nothing should be. Each distortion a warship, silent and waiting. Estimated armament? Unknown. But if they share hull composition... The officer paused. Each one could repeat that tungsten strike. Sarek's throat tightened. 67 rods, 67 corridors through our empire. He turned away from the data feed. Record everything. This battle is no longer tactical. It's philosophical. On the outer relay screens, evacuation ships vanished into hyperspace, their signals winking out one by one. Each departure coincided with a shift in the hidden formation. The Terran vessels adjusted their positions, closing the lattice gap until the civilians were clear. Admiral, said the COMEM's chief, their grid is contracting. They're forming a perimeter around the relic. Sarek nodded slowly. A burial guard. The relic pulsed again. Once, twice, then silence. The hidden ships mirrored the sequence and disappeared from sensors entirely. No flare, no warp trail. Just absence. All contacts lost, the chief said. Stealth index 0. They're gone. Sarek looked to the viewport. The void was clean again. Too clean. Only shattered debris remained, orbiting in slow motion, lit by the light of distant suns. He spoke quietly. How long were they watching? The science officer answered without looking up. From the beginning. The first ping, the first insult. They were already here. Sarek closed his eyes for a moment, feeling the chill of comprehension. Then the relic wasn't bait. It was the lesson. The comms relay beeped once. A final packet arrived, encrypted in the same Terran lattice. The translation rendered in simple text across the main display. Observation concluded. Doctrine validated. Hidden line maintained. No signature. No coordinates. Just those words, hovering in the air like judgment. Sarek stared at them until they faded. Hidden line, he repeated. They draw it before we ever see it. Outside, the void was still again. But somewhere beyond the light, 67 unseen shapes moved away, taking their silence with them. It began without warning. No declaration, no visible command. Just impact. At 0200 Fleet Standard, the Imperial Tracking Network registered simultaneous kinetic signatures from 6 separate vectors. Distances, 0.3 to 1.1 AU. The hidden Terran formation had moved from observation to action. Admiral, multiple projectiles inbound, shouted the sensor chief. Not energy. Solid mass. Count hundreds, no thousands. Identify trajectories. Sarek barked. They're everywhere. The first salvo struck before the sentence ended. The nearest impact vaporized a carrier group instantly. No flash, no beam. Just matter meeting arrogance. 9 minutes later, every quadrant of the Imperial fleet was under invisible fire. Each projectile, dense tungsten rods fired from rail platforms at relativistic velocity, arrived in synchronized intervals. Thousands of impacts per minute, every vector calibrated with surgical precision. They're timing shots to our evasive maneuvers, whispered the navigation officer. Each strike lands where we will be. Sarek didn't speak. His eyes followed the holomap collapsing ship by ship, red icons fading faster than updates could process. Confirmed numbers. Admiral, the officer swallowed. We're losing one vessel every 2.2 seconds. Do the math, 6 hours. By the first hour, 1,800 ships were gone. By the second, 3,900 on each strike was terminal. No wasted energy, no secondary detonation. The human fire doctrine valued clean kills. Targeting is predictive beyond quantum, the science officer murmured. They're reading our probability curves before we act. How? Observation. They've studied us long enough to know what we'll fear most. Another salvo landed. 12 bright fractures across the dark. Entire battle groups vanished. Comms dissolved into chaos. Pleas for guidance. Half-finished orders. Raw silence. Sarek stood motionless. He had no counter. No shield could stop velocity at 0.2 C. Then came the precision burst. Admiral! The comms chief's voice broke. 9,600 confirmed losses we have. 340 ships remaining. The fleet was dismembered. But even as destruction continued, the strikes remained bounded. Civilian convoys, evacuation routes, and escape pods drifted untouched, each vector carefully avoided. Mercy in mathematics. A punchline emerged from the madness. 6 hours, 9,000 ships, not one stray round. The surviving officers whispered the line like scripture. The railgun fire ceased at the 6-hour mark exactly. Sensors normalized. Radiation quieted. The relic and its hidden companions glowed faintly in the aftermath, blue ion trails fading like smoke over a battlefield of ghosts. Then, static. Admiral, said the comms chief, incoming gravitic signal. Origin. The Terran formation. The voice that followed was calm, unhurried. Command code, Cessation Protocol 1. Surrender code acknowledged. The words carried across all bands, translated automatically into every language the Empire used. Sarek's breath caught. They stopped because we yielded, The relic pulsed once. Every Terran ship matched it, 67 lights across the void, steady and solemn. "Transmit confirmation," Sarek said quietly. "Of surrender?" the officer asked. "No," he replied. "Of comprehension. The surviving Imperial fleet powered down weapons." One by one, reactors entered safe mode. Across the dark, the Terran vessels rotated, presenting non-combat profiles. "No pursuit. No demand. They're holding position," the sensor chief whispered. "Not advancing," Sarek nodded. "That's their victory. They don't need to move." He watched as the debris field cooled, thousands of glowing fragments drifting through the emptiness. The numbers scrolled across his display, 9,600 destroyed. 340 remain. "Civilian casualties, 0. Perfect arithmetic," he murmured. "A war fought like surgery." He turned to his crew. "Record this as the first fire accord. The moment they stopped when they didn't have to." A final transmission flickered through the comm grid, soft as breath. "Humanity ceases fire." Dominion acknowledged. "Rebuild with caution." And then the lights on every Terran ship dimmed together, their hulls blending into the starfield, ghosts returning to myth. Sarek stared into the dark, listening to the silence their guns had left behind. 6 hours, he said. They erased an empire, then apologized for the noise. No one spoke. The void didn't need to. The war ended without a final shot. When the silence settled, it carried no triumph, only the soft hum of repair drones and the drifting of shattered hulls. 6 hours of annihilation had left an empire without command. The surviving ships floated under Terran escort lights. Engines cold, weapons disabled. From the flagship Vorinth, Admiral Sarek watched as shuttles emerged from the relic's hull, sleek, silver, marked with the Terran emblem. "No weapons, no escorts. Medical craft. They're boarding us," said the comms officer, disbelief edging her voice. Sarek didn't flinch. "Let them." The first Terran shuttle docked at 0312. Its airlock opened to reveal humans, flesh and bone, unarmored, calm. Their uniforms bore no insignia of rank, only a single white line along the sleeve. One stepped forward, his voice quiet but unyielding. "We are medical staff. You are injured. This vessel is under protection." They spoke as if the battle were a memory already judged. Within an hour, Terran medbays were active on half the surviving Imperial ships. Drones ferried wounded soldiers without discrimination. Imperial, civilian, alien. None were refused. "Admiral," reported the science officer, "they're using nanomedical arrays centuries ahead of anything in our archives. Casualty stabilization at 99%. Sarek watched screens fill with feeds of recovery pods glowing blue. Soldiers who had once called humans extinct were now breathing under their care. On the public relay, a message appeared. "Not coded, not encrypted. Universal frequency, combat concluded. Prisoners to be processed under Terran articles of conduct. No executions. Trials commence upon stabilization." The words spread faster than fear. Across the core systems, governments awoke to find the transmission already playing on every official network. Visual feeds showed the wreckage, the relief efforts, the quiet authority of Terran order. The moral inversion was complete. Once mocked as relics, humans now dictated the code of mercy. A punchline burned across the live broadcast. Power without cruelty. Law without conquest. Within 12 hours, the first tribunals began. Terran officers sat beside Imperial jurists, reviewing the logs of those who had ordered civilian targeting during the war. No public executions followed, only sentences of service, medical reconstruction, and testimony recording. Every trial ended with the same phrase delivered in flawless standard: judgment rendered under observation, not vengeance. Sarek attended the first hearing via remote link. He listened as the Terran representative, a woman with a voice of tempered steel, spoke to the assembly of captains. "You called us extinct. You made extinction a weapon. We responded with precision, not anger. That difference defines the boundary between civilization and predation." None argued. None dared. The recordings were released freely to the galaxy. Within days, border states declared neutrality. Within weeks, entire factions renounced their oaths to the Empire. No human fleet threatened them. They simply watched. On the Vorinth, the crew gathered in silence as a final transmission from the relic played. The image was stark. an empty command chamber aboard the Terran vessel, light spilling across steel. A single voice narrated over it, "We do not rebuild empires. We mend what war breaks. Those who surrender live. Those who learn, endure." The message repeated once, then faded into static. Sarek remained at the viewport long after. Around him, Imperial officers sat among Terran medics, their uniforms indistinguishable in the white light. "Admiral," said one young human nurse, "your people fought hard." He nodded slowly. "And lost cleanly," she smiled faintly. "Clean loss is mercy. Not everyone earns it." Outside, drones towed wreckage toward a containment field, sorting the dead with precision and respect. The galaxy watched it unfold in real time, awe replacing defiance. Sarek whispered to no one in particular. They didn't conquer us. They audited us. The relic's engines glowed once more, orienting toward the edge of known space. Humanity's work here was done, and the galaxy, for the first time in memory, began to imitate them. The void beyond charted space was silent for centuries, until it wasn't. At 400 universal time, long-range Terran sensors caught a whisper, a pulse of structured radiation, faint but deliberate, emerging from coordinates 43 light-years past the Perseus frontier. The relic, still orbiting above the ashes of the Imperial fleet, was the first to hear it. "Admiral," said the science officer, voice taut, "we're receiving a repeating transmission from beyond mapped sectors." "Tri-band signal. Ancient formatting." Sarek leaned closer. "Origin?" "Uncertain. The signature predates all known civilizations. Power output? Immeasurable." On the main display, the waveform unfolded like a heartbeat made of lightning. Each pulse carved through background noise, clean, recursive, precise. Not random, the relic responded, not with words but with alignment. Slowly, deliberately, it turned its bow toward the void. Engines stirred, pale blue radiance crawling along its hull like dawn breaking over metal. "Why is it moving?" Sarek asked. The human liaison aboard his bridge, one of the medics who had stayed, answered softly. "Because it recognizes the pattern." "Explain." She pointed to the waveform. "That isn't a call to attack. It's a diagnostic beacon. An exterminator construct, a machine built to erase biospheres." Sarek stared. "Built by whom?" "Not by us. By what ended before us." A chill passed through the deck. The waveform looped again, longer this time. Then a secondary pulse, deeper, slower, followed, as if something vast had awakened and stretched. Telemetry from deep space probes began to arrive in fragments. One image stabilized, a lattice structure larger than a moon, metallic and skeletal, revolving around a dark star. Energy output matched planetary annihilation thresholds. Gravitic amplitude rising, reported the sensor chief. Equivalent to 30 supernovae compressed into one-point source. "It's charging," Sarek's throat went dry. "And humanity knows of this?" "They will now," the liaison said. A new transmission cut across all channels. Terran code, level 1 clearance. The relic itself was broadcasting, its voice calm, as if reading from an old scripture. Outer construct identified. Classification, exterminator. Containment priority, absolute. All surviving fleets stand down. The message repeated twice, then appended a final line. Engagement authorized. Doctrine, preservation. The surrounding Terran vessels, those hidden 67 ships, reactivated in silence, their stealth fields flickering like breath. One by one they aligned behind the relic in perfect formation. The geometry was simple, an arrow aimed into darkness. Sarek felt the shift through the viewport. The void itself seemed to tilt, gravity flexing as the human fleet prepared to burn. "They're leaving," the comms officer whispered. "For what?" The liaison's gaze stayed fixed on the stars. "To stop extinction before it begins." On the monitors, the exterminator lattice expanded. 6 new points ignited, activation nodes. The pulse increased tempo, now resonating with the Terran ship's own reactor rhythm, as if the ancient machine recognized kinship or challenge. "Admiral," said the science officer, "energy levels in that structure exceed our measurement scales. If it completes charge, the core will—" "I know." The relic sent one last transmission, directed to every living mind tuned to the band. Humanity's silence ends here. Observation concludes. Response resumes. Across the galaxy, receivers captured it. Miners, traders, scholars, children, all heard the same calm voice threaded through static. Then, the fleet accelerated. No countdown. No flash, just movement, clean and infinite. Mach values blurred into irrelevance as the ships crossed the barrier of known space, their engines burning white gold against the night. The relic's final telemetry recorded one image, the exterminator lattice opening its core, a star dying inside it, light curving backward. Sarek stood at the viewport, watching the afterglow fade. "They're going to fight gods," he murmured. The liaison turned to him, expression unreadable. "No," she said. "They're going to remind them what mercy looks like." Outside, the stars fell quiet again. The void waited. The relic did not return, and somewhere beyond the edge of every map, humanity's engines roared into the dark, answering the oldest signal in the universe.